And so I was about 10 miles into the race, and I was coming to a corner, and there was a cadet standing facing me, and he was waving me on to make this turn. And there were two bikers on the corner that I was coming around to pass, and he was waving me like this. Well, what I didn't know that there was traffic on this road, and he was telling me to just keep going, and as I made the turn and passed these two bikers, here comes a four-wheel drive vehicle from behind, and eats my bicycle and then tries to eat me. Yeah. And so I got catapulted out of my bike and landed pretty hard on the ground, and the moment I landed on the ground, I knew I was in trouble. And so they took me to the hospital and went through a series of CAT scans and x-rays, and found out that I had broken 6 vertebrae in my spine. And when you land really hard on your butt, the weight of the compression from the force takes vertebrae that are columns and it pancakes them. So the vertebrae were compressed, and the very top one, from the way I landed, was the most compressed. It was more than 60% compressed, and if you take a volume of mass and you flatten it, the matter's got to go somewhere. So the bone fragments went back on my spinal cord, and the arch that contained the spinal cord was fractured also. So when they showed me the x-rays and they showed me that I had compression fractures, I wasn't too worried about it until they showed me that one vertebrae and they showed me the bone fragments on the spinal cord, and I was in incredible pain and a lot of sensory changes going on in my body. So the recommendation at the time was a radical surgery called Harrington rod surgery.
Because obviously you knew exactly what was going on because it's your profession.
Right, and I had seen several Harrington rod surgeries, and basically what they do is they make a long incision along the spine. They put these stainless steel rods mounted to the backs of the vertebrae, but they cut off the whole entire back sides of the vertebrae, and they screw these long stainless steel rods in there, and then they take bone fragments from your hip and they paste it over the top, and they hope for the best. Well, the purpose of those is to stabilize those bone fragments. So my Harrington rods would go from the base of my neck to the base of my spine, would cover pretty much my whole entire spine. And after I got the first opinion, I thought, well, there's got to be another way. So then we called in a neurosurgeon after the orthopedic surgeon left, and he pretty much said the same exact thing as the first surgeon. So I went. One of my friends came from Hawaii and sat with me, and we said we got to move to San Diego, back to where I live. So we went to Scripps Hospital and immediately met by another surgeon who said, he was one of those guys that was handsome together. He was the hospital director, medical director, and he was adamant. He said, we have to get you on the operating table today. And the reason being is the longer you wait, the body starts doing the healing process, and the strings of calcium fibers start to form to mend the broken bones. And he said, listen, and I said, whoa, I can't rush into this. He said, listen, you have about 24 to 48 hours to make your decision. If you wait too long, then we have to do a radical surgery where we cut you open from the front and the back. And he said, I don't recommend that because it's a high mortality rate. So, I think the worst of human suffering is indecision. When you don't know.
Absolutely. You don't know what to do.
So all my friends were there, and there were physicians and alternative health practitioners and acupuncturists, nutritionists, chiropractors, medical physicians. And they were all standing around the table with me, and when you're in trouble when your friends pat you on the shoulder and they say, we know you'll make the right choice. Because what that really translates into is, I'm so glad I'm not you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they all, filed out of the room, and as I sat there, I thought...
So you're literally completely alone with making this decision then?
Yeah, I was alone.
Yeah.
And so I started to think about living with a stainless steel rod in my spine, probably living in pain, and spending the rest of my life trying, to get off medications to take the pain away. So I thought, well, maybe one more opinion from one more surgeon. So the next day, another surgeon comes in, and he says, look, we don't have to put 12-inch stainless steel rods in your spine. we can put 8-inch stainless steel rods in your spine. We can keep them in for a year, and we can take them out and put 4-inch stainless steel rods in your spine. And this man was a gigantic man. He was about 6'2" or 6'3", and he was probably 300 pounds. And I said to him, well, Doc, don't you think that those stainless steel rods would limit mobility in my thoracic spine? And he looked at me and he said, don't worry, there's no mobility in your thoracic spine. The moment he said that, it just caught my attention, because I had been teaching yoga and martial arts for many years in Southern California, and I had a lot of movement in my thoracic spine. And I looked at him and I saw that he had no movement in his thoracic spine. And in that moment, I realized that I probably knew as much about the spine as he did. And it was the wrong decision. And my father, who was a simple man, just said to the doctor, hey, he knows exactly what he's doing, don't worry. And so then I left. I left the hospital and I thought, now I have to create a game plan if I'm going to heal this body of mine. And so the principle that I lived by at the time was the simple saying, the power that made the body heals the body. And I kept saying it to myself, the power that made the body heals the body. And I started thinking about that innate intelligence that keeps our heart beating and digests our food and creates such magnificent order in our body, and at the same time orchestrates so many functions and gives us life that most people never take the time to really acknowledge. And a lot of the principles in alternative healing have to do with trusting that innate intelligence. It's a chiropractic principle, but it's a principle in acupuncture. It's a principle that there's a life force that is a giver of life, that has an intelligence. It's a conscious intelligence, and that it orchestrates so many functions that happen on the subconscious level. Now, I also was licensed and certified as a hypnotherapist, that I had studied while I was in school many hours of hypnotherapy and had a private practice, and I saw amazing things when I worked with people, from healing of rashes to stop smoking to addictions to sexual dysfunction. I saw amazing things, and just the power of the subconscious mind was a very real thing for me, because I saw that when people tapped into it, it could do things that the conscious mind couldn't do. Now, I didn't have many experiences of that. I had seen the experiences, and I had counseled people to have their transformations, but it wasn't really real for me. So this was the moment in my life, Ian, where I had to take everything that I intellectually and philosophically understood and see if I applied it to my life, if I could produce results as well.
No, I understand.
It's a kind of a unique moment, because it usually takes tragedy, I think, for us to get to that point, or it takes trauma for us to can't go on business as usual.
Desperation is a great motivating force.
And pain, pain too. So I knew the power of the subconscious mind. I had seen it. I believed in that intelligence that gives life to the body. And I was young enough and simple enough, and at the same time fearless enough to be willing to roll the dice. And so I said to myself, if I know that the intelligence will heal my body right now, but it'll only heal it equal to the genetic orders that it's been templated or given to it. So I knew that the compression fractures would heal as crumbled, broken bones, that I may face paralysis, because that was the diagnosis. And so I thought, if I could make contact with this intelligence, if I could direct it, if I could give it some orders, if I could give it a signal or a message, and then get out of the way, maybe it would do the healing for me, because it obviously takes care of so many other functions. So I was asking it to go to the next level. Now, the beauty behind this is that I wasn't distracted by my life anymore. There was no longer any people to take care of. There wasn't any training. I wasn't running or swimming or biking. I wasn't running a practice or teaching yoga or martial arts anymore. I went from 100 miles an hour to 0. And so my thought was, I'm not going to let any thought go by unchecked that I would want to create as a future. Now, all my friends around me were saying, sell your practice, get rid of it right now while it's doing very well. And And I listened to all of them, and I said, no. If I sell my practice, that means then that I have a doubt that I'm going to walk again.
Yeah.
So I did everything as if I was going to do just fine. And they told me, that without the surgery that I have to wear a body cast from my chin to my hips and wear it every day of my life for at least a year, and then maybe I'd do well. And so 6 months of laying face down, 3 to 6 months laying face down, 6 months of wearing a body brace was pretty much the hopeful, diagnosis and prognosis. So I spent 2 hours a day in the morning and 2 hours a day in the evening reconstructing my spine. And I wanted to create a perfect picture, a perfect model for this mind to get what I wanted. Now, you never know how distracted your mind is until you're left with yourself. And so in the beginning, my mind was wandering to all my fears, and it was distracted from too many different things.
Because you were lying down all the time,
face down,
you?
Face down.
You were lying face down,
face
so
down.
You couldn't read.
Couldn't do anything.
You could listen to the radio or something like that.
Yeah, and I could turn my head, and
so you were left really just with what was going on in your mind.
Yeah, and very humbling also to be a 26-year-old kid who's driving foreign sports cars and being successful, and the next thing you know, facing a very, very different life ahead of him. So 2 hours a day, morning and evening, I would reconstruct my spine, and it was perfect. It was with the intention that I wanted this subconscious mind to know what I wanted. Now, if my mind wandered to some extraneous thought, I would start all over again.
Yeah.
And in the beginning, it was very tedious and very frustrating. But what happened was, the more I did it, the easier it got.
Well, it's like meditation, where people that have tried meditation, and you start, your mind wanders, and the whole thing is bringing it back, bringing it back.
Yeah.
It's a very similar process.
It's the exact single-minded process in meditation. Yeah. And so what I didn't know, that when I was doing it, that the more you do anything neurologically, it causes nerve cells to wire together. So I was creating a new network of neurons to reflect my future, what I wanted. And the more I did it, the easier it got. And then there came a day where I was able to do it all the way through without being distracted. And what happened was, I was able to do it in less time, and I was able to do it clearly. And when I finished it for the first time without being distracted, the best way I could describe it, it was like hitting a tennis ball in the sweet spot. It was like hitting a golf ball right on the nose of the driver. Right. It was a solid, complete, solid feeling. And the moment that happened, I knew that I felt like something happened. Now, I continued doing that, and as I continued doing it, it got easier and easier, so I was doing it in less time. So then I started thinking about doing things I'd love to do, like sit up and eat lunch, like use the restroom, sit on the toilet, like watch the sunset. I was contained. And so what I didn't know that I was doing at the time is that I was rehearsing mentally and preparing my body for the experience ahead of the actual experience. That my brain and mind were changing and my body was changing as a result of my internal process. And there's enough research now to show that that's in fact absolutely possible.
So when you were doing it at the time, you were a little bit of a pioneer, because you weren't. You had a feeling this was going to work, and you had the kind of a momentum was building, but you weren't absolutely sure, or were you? Were you sure it was going to take you to full recovery?
No, I wasn't. But what started to happen was, as I started to do this more and more, my pain started changing, and my sensory changes started beginning to become more normal. And the moment I started to notice that my body started changing, I made the immediate association with what was happening inside of me, with what was happening outside of me. And the moment I made that connection, I became very, very passionate. I just knew that I was on to something.
Yeah.
And so I had people come and lay hands on my back, and I had other things going on. I did a lot of different things. But to finish the story, in 10 weeks, I was 10 and a half weeks. I was back on my feet, and then back in my practice in 11 weeks or so, and training again at 12 weeks, and back to my normal life. And